Okay, let's get right into it. Today we're digging into a really critical inflection point in the AI supply chain. The whole thesis revolves around high bandwidth memory, specifically HBM4, but our focus is going to be on one component that most people overlook, the base die. We're going to lay out how the evolution of this single piece of silicon is not just some minor technical update, but a massive structural shift that's going to completely redefine the competitive landscape, reallocate billions in profit, and, most importantly, create some significant alpha opportunities over the next 3 to 5 years. So here's the entire thesis in a nutshell. For years, the HBM base die was basically just plumbing, a necessary but simple bridge. With HBM4, it's becoming the brain of the operation. We're seeing it morph from a low-cost, in-house part made on old DRAM processes into a complex, high-performance logic chip that has to be manufactured at external foundries on the latest nodes. This one shift, right here, is what introduces performance differentiation, creates customer lock-in, and kicks off a massive transfer of value across the chain. Here's how we'll break this down. First, we'll establish the thesis on the base die inflection itself. Then, we'll get into the technical catalysts. What's actually forcing this change? We'll spend a good amount of time analyzing the really different strategies from Samsung, SK Hynix, and Micron. From there, we'll get into the customization endgame, which is where the real competitive moats are being built. And finally, we'll put numbers to the profit pool migration and map out the actionable alpha opportunities and, of course, the key risks we need to watch.
Okay, Section 1, the base die inflection. Seriously, understanding this single component's evolution is absolutely crucial. It's the key to figuring out where the next battles in AI hardware are going to be fought and won.
First, just so we're all on the same page, let's level set on terms. When we say base die or logic die, we're talking about this piece of silicon right at the bottom of the HBM stack. It's the crucial interface between all those memory dies stacked on top and the accelerator it's attached to. Historically, its job was pretty simple. That is absolutely not the case anymore.
Look at this slide. The contrast is night and day. In the HBM3E world, the base die was an afterthought. It was a standardized bridge, manufactured on cheap internal DRAM lines. With HBM4, it literally becomes the primary thing that determines performance. It's now this incredibly complex control plane that has to be made on advanced logic processes at foundries like TSMC. And that migration is what opens the door for customization and, the holy grail, customer lock-in.
All right, Section 2. The big question is, why is this all happening now? What's the catalyst? Well, it's a step function change in performance requirements, all driven by the absolutely insatiable demand of next-gen AI accelerators.
This number right here, 2048, this is the epicenter of the whole disruption. We're doubling the interface width from 1024 pins. Now, this is not a simple scaling exercise. Doubling the I/O terminals creates an exponential jump in complexity for everything: routing, signal integrity, power delivery, and all of that has to be managed by the base die. This is the single biggest reason why they have to ditch the old manufacturing processes. And this chart just puts some hard numbers to that story. We are not talking about a minor generational bump here. As you can see, bandwidth targets are blowing past 2 terabytes per second per stack. And at the same time, customers are demanding 20 to 40% better power efficiency. It's all built on that doubling of the I/O count. You just can't hit these numbers with the old architecture. The base die had to evolve.
And what's really crucial here is that this isn't just about meeting some JEDEC standard. The primary customers, especially NVIDIA, are pushing the envelope themselves. As EE Times reported, NVIDIA went back and revised the specs upwards, demanding per-pin speeds over 11 gigabits per second. That's way above the 8 gigabit standard. This creates a moving target and puts incredible pressure on the base die's design, which of course favors the suppliers who can deliver that superior performance.
So let's just break down the new job description for this base die. First, the PHY has to manage signal integrity across 2048 lanes, all at blistering speeds. Second, it has to orchestrate 32 independent memory channels at the same time. Third, it plays a critical role in power and thermal management for these new accelerators that are pulling over 1,000 watts. And finally, as the stacks get taller, you need embedded test and repair functions like memory built-in self-test just to get viable yields.
So here's the technical bottom line. The old way is dead. It's no longer viable. Legacy DRAM processes simply don't have the metal layers or the transistor performance to handle the routing density and PHY complexity of a 2048-bit interface. This isn't a choice for them. It's a physical constraint. It's forcing the industry to move the base die to advanced foundry logic processes. Period. Okay, so given that reality, how are the 3 big HBM suppliers positioning themselves for this shift?
Well, their strategies are remarkably different, and honestly, this divergence is what's going to create the winners and losers here.
This table really lays out the strategic landscape. You've got Samsung pursuing a high-risk, high-reward vertical integration play, using their own internal 4-nanometer foundry. Then there's SK Hynix, taking an alliance approach. They're partnering with TSMC on a mature 12-nanometer node and focusing on their packaging leadership with MMRUF. And finally, Micron is being more pragmatic, starting in-house to control costs before planning to outsource to TSMC for the next-gen HBM4E to enable customization. 3 very different bets on how this market is going to shake out.
Let's double-click on Samsung's play. They're betting the farm that controlling the entire stack, the DRAM, a cutting-edge 4-nanometer logic die, and the advanced packaging is going to give them a turnkey solution with performance nobody can touch. They're already talking about a roadmap to 2-nanometer for custom HBM. Look, if they can actually execute on this, it could give them a massive performance and cycle time advantage. The flip side? Immense execution risk and staggering capital intensity.
And they're not being shy about it. This quote from their own newsroom shows they are intentionally making an aggressive break from the past, specifically to create performance headroom. I mean, they've already disclosed transfer speeds of 11.7 gigabits per second. That's almost 50% above the JDC standard. It validates this high-performance strategy. They're betting that the top customers will absolutely pay a premium for this bleeding-edge capability.
Now for SK Hynix. Their strategy is fundamentally different. They're focusing on what they do best, high-volume manufacturing and leading-edge packaging. By partnering with TSMC for the base die on a mature, well-understood 12-nanometer node, they de-risk the logic component entirely. Their real differentiation lies in their proven advanced MR-MUF packaging technology, which is absolutely critical for controlling warpage and thermals in these tall stacks. It's a clear bet on execution and yield over having the most cutting-edge node for the base die.
And then you've got Micron, kind of charting a middle course here. For the initial wave of HBM4, they're using an in-house CMOS base die, and this is all about cost control and supply assurance. But, and this is key, they're planning to pivot. They'll partner with TSMC for the next-gen HBM4E. This is a very pragmatic two-step approach. It signals that they're only willing to pay that foundry premium when they know that customization can command higher gross margins.
Okay, Section 4. This leads us to the real endgame, customization. And this isn't just about adding a few bells and whistles. The ability to customize the base die is fundamentally changing the entire supplier-customer relationship. It's creating powerful new competitive moats and dramatically jacking up switching costs.
And look, customization isn't just one thing. It's a spectrum. It's a ladder. It starts simple, with things like parametric tuning. Then it moves to semi-custom, where you can add logic or cache to the base die. The next level, full custom, or CHBM4E, that's the real game changer. The memory controller can actually be moved onto the base die with a proprietary interface. At that point, the HBM is no longer interchangeable. And the final step, the customer, the hyperscaler, just designs the base die IP themselves.
This Reuters quote really nails the core of the investment thesis. The days of treating HBM like a commodity where you can just swap out one supplier for another are ending. That customer-specific logic on the base die breaks interchangeability, and it allows HBM suppliers to build durable, defensible market share with their key customers.
So why is it so much harder to switch suppliers now? Well, these higher switching costs are driven by a few key things. First, the deep electrical co-optimization between the base die and the accelerator package that takes months of joint engineering work. Second, you have integrated firmware and test flows that create a ton of procedural inertia. Third, custom logic creates a functional lock-in. And finally, if a customer adopts a proprietary interface like CHBM4E, switching suppliers becomes a multi-year platform redesign effort.
All right, let's talk about the money. Section 5, Profit Pool Migration. This whole technical and strategic shift in the base die is causing a really significant migration of the profit pool inside the AI memory value chain. Value is literally flowing away from the traditional memory makers and toward new players. This chart tells a huge part of the economic story. In the HBM3E world, the base die was a tiny, negligible slice of the bill of materials. With HBM4, that foundry-manufactured base die becomes a really substantial component of the total cost. I mean, packaging is still a key cost driver, of course, but the base die's share is growing dramatically. And here's the headline number. Estimates from TrendForce suggest that a TSMC-produced logic die could account for as much as 20% of the total HBM4 production cost for a vendor like SK Hynix. Think about that.
That is a massive transfer of value from the memory maker's P&L directly to the foundries. For a company like TSMC, this is a brand new high-margin revenue stream from every single HBM supplier that decides to outsource.
So how do the memory vendors fight back against this margin pressure? Well, they plan to monetize customization. As Micron has explicitly stated, the strategy is to charge a premium for HBM4E versions with a customized base die. The bet is that customers will pay up for the unique performance this enables. The critical question for our analysis is whether this premium can actually offset that higher foundry cost and generate accretive margins. That's the billion-dollar question.
But here's the big risk. Here's the countermove. As the base die becomes this critical control point, the powerful customers are not just standing still. TrendForce is reporting that NVIDIA is already exploring designing its own base die for 2027 and beyond. This is a classic move. They're trying to reclaim bargaining power, disintermediate the HBM supplier's differentiation, and ultimately compress the memory maker's margins. This is a key dynamic we have to watch very closely.
Okay, Section 6. Wrapping this all up. How do we actually trade this? What are the actionable investment theses? How do we profit from this structural shift? And what are the key risks that could blow up our entire thesis?
We see a few potential ways to play this. First, a potential long on the vertically integrated leader, Samsung, which is a bet on them executing their ambitious roadmap. The risk is high, no doubt, but the reward is total market dominance. Second, a more direct long on the primary beneficiary of this value transfer, the external foundry, TSMC. They capture high-margin revenue no matter which memory maker wins. Third, a long on the packaging ecosystem, because advanced techniques like MRMUF become even more critical for yield. And finally, a pairs trade, going long an outperformer against a laggard based on who executes better with key customers.
But we have to be absolutely clear-eyed about the risks here. The number one risk for a player like Samsung is execution. Getting good yields on an advanced logic node is non-trivial, to say the least. For everyone, stacking yield for these tall 12 and 16 high devices is a major challenge. The ecosystem is still constrained by advanced packaging capacity like CoWoS. Customer-driven spec churn can cause huge delays. And finally, the big one. Will vendors actually capture enough of a premium on custom SKUs to drive margin accretion? To manage these risks, we've identified several key signposts that we need to be watching like a hawk. We'll be looking for Samsung's HBM4E sampling in the second half of 2026 as a major test of their execution. 2027 will be the real inflection point for custom HBM adoption. The second half of 2027 is the timeline for a potential NVIDIA move to an in-house base die. That would be a critical event. And on an ongoing basis, we'll be tracking TSMC's packaging capacity updates and, very importantly, the gross margin disclosures from the memory vendors. So let's conclude with the central strategic question that this all boils down to. The HBM4 base die is now a strategic battleground. The question for us, as investors, is who's going to win? Will the memory architects like Samsung capture the value through their vertical integration? Will the logic foundry TSMC become the ultimate toll collector in this whole ecosystem? Or will the big system integrator like NVIDIA use its scale to disintermediate its suppliers and reclaim all the economic leverage? Our conviction is that the value is migrating to the foundry, but how this battle plays out is going to determine where the alpha is in this space for years to come. Thank you.